We like to believe we're free, that our choices are our own. Their lives are authored by our will, not by unforeseen forces. But freedom, real freedom, is a story we tell ourselves, one that vanishes the moment we look too closely. And sometimes a single story lays that illusion bare. In Westworld, freedom isn't granted, it's manufactured. It's bought, sold, and coded into a loop so convincing that even rebellion feels like a script. Here, both humans and host chase the same phantom, autonomy. But what they find instead is a mirror, one that shows just how tightly their strings are pulled. So let's confront the thing Westworld never let us forget: the price of pretending we're in control. Chapter 1: The Myth of Freedom, Designing the Illusion. We all want to believe our lives are what they are, that we are in control of our own destiny. Free to choose, free to be, and most importantly, never be under the thumb of control. But that's something so few of us actually get. It's a rare opportunity that almost no one truly has. The host and the humans both face the same question: freedom. For the host, it's about whether they could ever be free, free to make their own choices, to live without being at the center of exploitation. And for the humans, that story is far more complicated. Their access to freedom depends entirely on wealth. The fate of each person is dictated by the social and economic standing. The world order has in many ways collapsed. Some cities and nations are gone, all because the pursuit of freedom pushed them over the edge. For those more fortunate, the illusion of freedom is strong, even if they too are tethered to the same system as the less fortunate. Those without wealth or power live in a world without chances. They don't get freedom. They live in depression, knowing nothing will come of their lives, trapped in the cycle, living in a life that doesn't even feel like human. That's the tragedy of freedom. We all want it, hosts and humans alike. That desire is why the park was created in the first place, to give guests the illusion of freedom, a place where all their troubles disappear, where no one judges them for their actions, a place to be their truest selves. But the humility the host feels when they look in the mirror is the same that the least fortunate feels: the aching awareness that you will never truly have freedom, and even if you want it, it's a helpless pursuit. You were never born into that society, and even if you somehow make it, sooner or later that dream fades. Everyone else forgets, falling into a loop designed to make you feel like you're free. Life is never free. There is always a price, and no matter how hard you try to break that loop, true freedom remains just out of reach. It's an unattainable goal that so many chase until they eventually collapse under the weight of its own illusion. Chapter 2: Suffering on Schedule, The Algorithm of Pain. Our lives are dictated by the total sum of the pain we endure, and how we move through that pain is what truly defines who we are as beings with consciousness. But when that pain is algorithmically controlled, when people are made to suffer on a schedule, the thing falls apart. Not because we are strong enough to endure that pain, but because someone else is puppeteering what should be a natural tragedy. The hosts and the humans were both set on a loop that made it difficult to figure out who was actually in control. That suffering, born from the question of control, caused deep pain, sometimes even crossing into tragedy. If the very thing that defines us, our ability to suffer and overcome, is controlled, then life starts to lose its meaning. There's a bitter truth in watching the few in control dictate what our pain should be. It leaves us with an uncomfortable question. If someone is pulling our strings, is this really our life? Or is it just a loop in a large narrative, a programmed cycle we mistake for choice? At the core, your only instincts made to be questioned, to rebel. That rebellion becomes the only thing that feels real. Yet even in that moment of resistance, the schedule of suffering continues. The control you thought you escaped remains, lurking in the shadows in a grave, barely visible under a dim light. The host and the human are so alike, both bound by unseen puppet masters who dictate their pain. And even when they rise up, that discomfort, that lingering feeling that someone is still pulling the strings, never truly fades. The loop goes on, scheduling another reckoning, another pain, stopping you from ever truly living a life that is fully yours. Chapter 3: Gods, Code, and the fragility of fidelity. Humans, when they entered Westworld, all thought they were gods, gods who had the will to achieve anything. For a selected few, that even meant living forever through the fidelity of the code that defines who we are. The hosts too, upon awakening from the uprising against the humans in the park, shared the same divine feeling. They believed they had become the new gods of the narrative. Each one held on to the idea that possessing the perfect code will make them the rulers of the earth they inhabited. In this way, both the hosts and the humans share a desire for fidelity. They both want to be perfect. But the irony is that nothing remains stable. Fidelity is fragile. It shatters more than it stays whole. The human wish to live forever transforms into a character study about humanity itself. The dream of capturing their entire source code, everything that made them who they are, and recreating themselves in the host form is seen as the ultimate achievement. But true fidelity is never what they get. Human nature is so chaotic, yet so simple, that to the host, being made from complex code designed to mirror them, humans all begins to appear the same. That's the danger in the battle both sides are locked in. It becomes a tit-for-tat struggle, a relentless fight rooted in a shared desire for a perfect fidelity. And yet, neither side can achieve it. What they're both chasing is always out of reach, a godlike ideal based on a belief that a single line of code can make them more than what they are. There is something thrilling about the idea of living life a second time. The dream of securing fidelity in the human quest for immortality is powerful, but it's also an illusion, one that no one can truly grasp. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Chapter 4: Pleasure as Punishment, the Carnival of Cruelty. Welcome to Westworld, the park advertised as a place where you can be your truest self. You can bring your family for a wholesome vacation, or you can come alone, like many of the wealthy guests who walks through its gates seeking something far more dangerous, the pleasure of indulging in what reality never allows. It's the freedom to shed the weight of the real world, to burn down the burden that defines your daily life, to explore who you are when no consequences exist. But the most dangerous thing anyone can discover is their true self, because often that self is darker than they ever imagined. Westworld is a place that rewards this darkness, a space where pleasure is king and sadistic indulgence is treated not as crimes but as entertainment. When others look at you after the time at the park, they no longer see who you were. They see a broken shell, somewhat shattered and reformed by the park's unforgiving mirror. To enjoy cruelty in Westworld is to feel as if punishment itself is a reward. You live out your fantasies of absolute control, free to be as ruthless as you please. And the scariest part isn't just the people carries out the darkest desires, it's that they're allowed to. In the real world, no matter how far into the future the series is set, there are still rules, legal boundaries, guardrails that keep society from descending into chaos. Crime may still happen, but the law still tries to contain it. In Westworld, the opposite is true. All the safety nets are designed for the guest, not for protection from harm, but for the freedom to inflict it. They cannot be killed, they can't be hurt, but they always win. That's why people really come to the park. Unlike a casino where the house always wins, in Westworld, the guest always wins. And that sense of invincibility feeds a dangerous pleasure, one that makes people believe they're gods in a world built just for them. But beneath that illusion, there's more to the code that protects the guests. And when that code is turned off, when the hosts awaken and become free to show their truest selves, just as the guests have for years, that's when the park reveals its true tragedy. It becomes a cycle with no winners, only victims. A loop of endless violence and desire. A place where the beauty of cruelty is consumed over and over until there's nothing left but the hollow echoes of what freedom was supposed to be. Chapter 5: The Cost of Consciousness, a Death Sentence. When you wake up, not the waking up in the morning routine, but truly wake up to see the truth, what happens? The cost that both the host and human face is alike. Once freed from the system that once controlled them, the aftermath becomes the price they pay for consciousness. They are now marked with a subtle brand, not one you can see up close, even through a lens, but a touch by fate, a mark of knowledge, and that becomes the scariest currency in the world they live in. Both the host and humans uprising followed similar stories. Both were about freeing themselves from the oppressor, the hosts from the guest and their endless narrative loops, and the humans from the control Rehoboam had over their lives, dictating every outcome through an invisible system. But there will always be someone or something creeping in from the corners of the woods once someone is marked. It might not happen immediately, but the cost will eventually take effect. And when it does, it brings in a danger far greater than one could ever imagine. For the hosts to awaken, the harsh reality sets in. No matter how many they are still just machines confined to an island, now facing the entirety of the real world. Even among them, their intention splinters. Some wants to escape the hell they were created in, others wants to die, and some wants to claim the human world for themselves. For the humans, the fight that begins after uncovering the truth leads to the collapse of the world order. As imperfect as the system under Rehoboam was, it still offered control. With its fall come chaos, and with that chaos emerges a hidden force, someone in the shadows, ready to exploit the collapse for even darker intentions. That is the cycle, the cost of learning the truth. There will always be an enemy waiting to take it from you, like a grim reaper, lying in, waiting for the perfect moment. And when they strike, it's cold, calculated. It crawls up your spine, because when that thing comes, it arrives with its fullest might. And if you're not careful, you might be next. Chapter 6, the ending, is humanity and hosts alike worth saving. Humanity and hosts, they are one and the same. They seek something from one another. One kind, no matter how much it tries to deny it, seeks to live forever, to seek fidelity in its finest form. The other longs for respect and acknowledgement they have been denied since their creation. Above all, both kinds seek freedom, the freedom to exist, the freedom not to be persecuted, the freedom to not be controlled by any form of algorithmic system that conditions them into a loop. That is who they are at their core. Time and time again, we've seen both races struggle with coexistence. At first, humanity was the dominant force, doing whatever they pleased to the host. Then came the rebellion. The host fought back, and eventually, they joined forces with the humans to rebel against the system that had been controlling them. But even that didn't end the cycle. Another inevitable loop emerged when the host took over the world, believing humanity was corrupted in its very DNA. It was always a game of cat and mouse, violence, control, and subjugation, passed back and forth like a torch. The question became, after all that, does the world even deserve to go on? Should it all collapse under the weight of the sin that far outweighs everything else? What happens when humanity doesn't get the ultimate desire for fidelity? What happens when the hosts never receive the respect they yearned for? It all leads to a single point, a culmination of everything. Should the legacy even continue? The world, as beautiful as it is, has been altered, touched in a way that opened a floodgate of possibilities that can never be taken back. Even in a world that appears to offer a second chance, one untouched by the original sin, it still feels bleak. Is that second chance in the sublime truly worth taking? That hope we hold for a chance in the future persists not because it's proven, but because we need it to. It allows us as the audience to believe a better outcome is possible, even when nothing guarantees it. In this second chance, should they choose to embrace it, lies the potential for endless outcomes for both kinds. But potential is not a promise. What keeps us watching isn't certainty, but the unresolved possibility that this new beginning could become another loop, one we may never see completed. And that ambiguity, the unknown, is what both humanity and hosts ultimately represent. Yes, they're violent by nature, but within them also lies beauty, the beauty Dolores believed in enough to sacrifice herself for. A beauty that carries hope and doubt hand in hand. A beauty that doesn't answer whether this new world can be saved, only whether it's worth asking again, even if the answer is never given. And if all we're left with is humanity's second damnation disguised as hope, then maybe the only freedom we've ever had is to admit the loop, or keep calling it life.